Go fix your hair. Yeah. Yo, Phil, show them the rash guard. Yeah. Yo, tell them what they need to do. Tell them the thing for YouTube.
You gotta go to YouTube, subscribe, and hit like.
Yeah. Like, share, subscribe, be like Bill. Check out our video description for dope rash guards just like this one. Happy Meal Project. Working escapes from the back. I will point out things that you should do. Okay. Where regardless of what position his hands are. I know in the very beginning they've taught you put your back to the mat. That's all wonderful, and what ends up happening is they tell you to go bring your back to the mat, and he's latched on here. And as I start sliding up, he starts coming up also, and now you ended up in a mount. Right? So mechanically, there's some issues, right? I don't want to get mounted, okay? I understand I'm in a predicament right now, and I know I want to get my back to the mat, but there's some things that I'd like to do before that to increase my chances of getting out. Obviously, I have one thumb grip and protecting my neckline. That's a given. If he grabs hold of my neck, we got issues going on. So that's the first thing I always do, okay? Number two is I would like to get my back to the mat, but I want to change the angle that I'm at so that I can potentially start getting some form of knee elbow escaping, and what we had been doing was attacking the leg lock. So my first reaction, I told you, was to see if I could step over this bottom foot, okay? The other day, there were some people that stepped over the bottom foot rolling live, and then they got pulled back to the other side, and as they got pulled back, then there's this wide open gap, and I'm gonna ask you if it happens, because I don't wanna say which one. And the one that it happened to, it's so funny, is that I started this because of him. He got pulled back and he landed like this and then started the whole process over. Don't you think as you're going over that this gap is so massive that I potentially stepped over and I'm getting yanked back? Why am I not going? Okay, I'm sliding out on the other side right away. The opening is massive. Whether I drive myself high, meaning that if Ethan's pulling me back at this point, I'm yanking, I'm going, okay, I got both my feet and I'm driving up this way. I had both of my feet and the gap was open. So I could potentially take this a different way. I could step this over and start trying to collect this bottom leg and disentangle myself so later on I could try to attack this leg. But the gap was open. So if I'm getting pulled back, I know you're not going to have a hard time, but both of my feet are in the center that I bridge hard and drive up. That's not what I'm going to teach today, okay? But if you're getting pulled over, don't land there and then try to get out. You had an opportunity to drive high and get your back to the mat. It's a little bit different on the sequence on the other side off of that pickup. But we're going to stay on this side for now. So my first goal is to put this leg over, okay, if I can. I also want this happening at the same time. I want to drop my shoulder as deep in this pocket as possible. So my goal is, right now Ethan has this grip where this is the pointing hand. There's two different grips. Obviously, he could have it the other way where we're like this. It's a little bit easier to get out of, right? But he has some things that are good for him also. But we're going to start like this, okay? So I've stepped over and I've had a hyper focus of where this leg is because I do want to get my hips out later. Okay, so my next goal is to drop this shoulder and almost get the clavicle and the deltoid between the two of us. So as I'm yanking down this, at this point, protecting my neck, I've tried to trap this foot, or at least have my foot on this side. I would prefer to have it trapped because I want to know what's happening with this foot. So as I pull this shoulder down, I pull it as hard as I can downward. So my second hand buries in the middle because he's going to be trying to get up. So I want to be able to use both of my hands to start sliding out because my goal is to recover. It's not to attack him yet. Now this gap in the center has penetration that when Ethan starts coming up, this hand was already, remember it had two functions. It had this long base to protect against here, but it's also on this deltoid that if Ethan starts coming up, come up Ethan, right? I'm already here on this deltoid pushing it out to collect this heel. Now we're going into that same spin that when we come on over, here we go, a take out, and I land on that. So let's start there, And then I want to play some different, we're going to keep going through escapes, but the whole goal right now is to attack legs. And what I need you to do is see the legs. They're there all the time. They just have different entries sometimes, but the product is still the same at the end. So let's start there and then we'll add as we go. Let's do it, guys, right? One of the things I've shown is that sometimes we're like this, right? Where this hand's here. And then Vladdy's question was right now, when you have this hand here, if for some reason Nathan does all of this stuff, he pinned my leg, I'm like this, he just turned. I'm going, damn, he's out. And I'm gonna risk this like this. I just told you where he's sitting now, and I'm going, man, I'm not big enough or strong enough, and by the time I come up, Ethan's already starting to separate me, and he's starting to put this other hand, and this leg is gonna dangle out by itself, right? Yeah, I know. You'll see it happening here, and it usually happens when that guy's 6'3" and the other guy's 5'10", and one guy's a brown belt, one guy's a blue belt. But mechanically, we're understanding now, I'm trying to learn the game that I have to beat the bigger, stronger guy. And I don't have all these like mechanical advantages, okay? So I'm like this, and I realize just now that this is different than this, where we're like this, on this side where I'm facing downward, but I'm on this side, okay? And I just realized that I'm over here trying to choke, and Nathan just dropped that shoulder on me, and now he's over that side, and I go, oh boy. And now I showed this, I've shown this before, where I've taken this leg out, and I've dumped around and dropped my head right here. That if for some reason Ethan were to turn this way, I could still take this quadrant, or I could potentially drive my knees up, and now I've become athletic where I'm underneath this armpit and I come up for this arm, right? But on the other side, it's different. I'm not underneath the armpit, right? So I'm like this. There's options you could do. And Vladdy asked me, how do I get to his back? And he went through this whole cycle. It just honestly really wasn't real, right? I'm like this, and I'm over here trying to choke him out. He just drops that clavicle, right? I'm like, oh, damn. So I take my hand out, and I lace it underneath his armpit on this side, right? Because I know right now, I would like to do what I just did before, but I don't go anywhere. I'm like this, right? I was the top hand. I just realized he dropped that clavicle, so I take my hand out, and I lace it under his armpit. And now my hands are like this, where I'm under both of his armpits. So now when I dump him out, I'm like this, that I can chase him on this armpit, but I may decide not to dump him out. And this is where you're gonna have, like, you can play with this. I'm like this, he stepped over my bottom foot. So I took my top hand out and I laced it underneath his armpit. And now I take my top leg out and I transfer it so that I can pull this hand out and now start driving up to either mount or attack him back on a gift wrap. But I get back underneath this armpit because I realize I'm losing you. So I don't want to lose you. And now when I say to you, man, you couldn't stay dominant on that guy. He's got so many holes in his game. Whether you submit him or not, you understand now like how mechanically you chase them over and over and over. Maybe you submit them later. You shouldn't lose mechanical position unless there's something really, and like usually you lose the position because mechanically you haven't learned the moves yet, the sequencing and all that stuff, okay? So I just showed it. I'm not gonna have you drill it because I do wanna go back to the legs, okay? Right, when we were here, we had done this the other day. I'm like this, right? And I'm gonna accept that I'm gonna get mounted, okay? I'm like this, and I just explained this also before. Before we go, this elbow that I told you to drop so deep in the pocket should have been lacing on the inside of this thigh right now, because I was late with this hand to help this hand, so now he's coming up, and now he's mounted on top of me, so I fight for my little wedges. So as he's coming up, I should have been very conscious of where this elbow is dropping, and it should have dropped on the inner thigh, because now I'm gonna start my shrimp elbow escape, right? So if you looked at a sphere, we were like this, and I'm here and I'm going, okay, I just dropped this, I stepped over, I'm fighting for position, and Nathan's coming up, and I'm going, okay, keep coming, sir. As I'm landing, this elbow's on the inside, because Ethan just struggled to get back up. And now, but I'm on the inside of this thigh, then I'm making the separation to get my knee line in. Now everything's got an issue again. Then I've made my separation off of the mount. And now I'm attaching it move to move and explaining how the game plays out. But even if you're mounted, you should have, I mean, Johnny, for 5 years, literally, you had to scrimmage from the mount. And I was shocked of all the things that people would do. I told this before, it's like they would put this leg like up in the air, and now they're trying to get out like this. And like, what did you think? This guy's underneath this thigh, couldn't turn. Like, early on, wasn't this leg dead? Wasn't this elbow dropped? I didn't pick this leg up. I didn't let you slide your foot underneath me. I had everything set that if I lost this position on the mount, I was already set to recover there. And if you did get underneath me on both, I was already set to go into my kipping escapes. So at no point was I ever short from A to B. My hands weren't out here, I was very conscious of what you wanted to do, and I'm explaining it, right? So everything exactly the same. Let the guy mount. Let the guy mount. Try to play it. We always say, Steve said this great to me, conscious contact. Try to play the story out. Because when you get in that spot, you're going to have to archive that memory. And the more detail you have to the memory, better chance you have of getting out. Like this. I went here. I dropped that clavicle. I stepped over. I'm fighting for position of this. And I'm going, okay. And I'm starting to slide out. I'm pushing. And Nathan's up. And my elbow is on this right here. Let me just drop this here. Right? And my elbow is perfectly set. I'm shrimping to get my knee line in. My knee line is separated as deep as possible. This is the leg that's in danger right now. So I push this side out so that I can expose this. Now I'm back on the heel. Let's try it, guys. I know you're taught to go from one side to the other, and this is how it works out. You go like this, right? And you go, okay. And you go until you get to the other side, and then they have you do cartwheels or some other thing. Probably, something like that, right? Right? So the reason I stopped it, I was like, man, nobody in this room knows how to shrimp, right? When I first dropped, and then I explained, right? If you were doing this at home, and this was, let's say, the line that you use to match up your shoulder lines, right? My hip should clear this shoulder line on a shrimp. I am not looking to go thinking I can run away with you, run away from you by shrimping like this, right? Who the hell does that? That doesn't work. I'm like this, and my hip line is going to cross this on a shrimp. So I bring my leg as tight to myself as I can, and you're going to see this hip is going to clear this. So as I shrimp, I already cleared it. Reason I bring it up, and right, I could also go back. So I'm going left, shrimping it all out, extending this leg. Reason I bring it up is I see people not knowing how to shrimp. And they're like this, and I get this elbow down, right, inside his thigh. And I see people pushing like this. What kind of physical strength do you think that you have that your lateral delt can make this separation when you could barely probably do 20 pounds for a strict 10 reps? This is the lateral delt right now, and your partner's allowing you to do this, to separate. You're not getting anywhere, man, right? It's my hip on the other side. So my elbow drops. This doesn't move. I'm pushing into the other side, and I'm doing this. I'm shrimping, driving in my hip that way. Hasn't moved, right? Created this massive pocket now. Shrimp it. And now this pocket's, anybody could drive through that thing. And now I drive this guy back in. It was the same shrimp, the same shrimp. But you've learned how to shrimp. And I don't want to I'm not trying to disparage anybody. But it's been ingrained in you a certain way how to shrimp. And you have no explosiveness to your hips. You got to learn how to do it. If you could do it by yourself, you could practice it. Your hip line should shoot out. Because later on, let's say, hypothetically, I get my hip line out. And let's say from a totally different position, I'm in a fight, and I'm going, I shrimp this out. I've already kicked this leg through, potentially to drive him back, but I've also kicked him through that I recover. And now I'm in turtle, shoulder rolling, you're sitting back. Right? I'm perfectly set. I don't want to get you so confused, but I have to be set to play the game as long as I have to play it. Where I'm constantly recovering. I don't know when I get to play offense again, but I don't want you getting me so deep in a pit that I'm going, man, it's going to be hard to get out of now. And there's this drastic weight disparity, that 50 pounds, and you are really good black belt. And I'm going, man, there's very little opportunities. When they're there, collect them, you know. But if you start doing this, like, so when you drop your elbow, have a focus of pushing into the back hip line, right? He's gonna let you, it's a drill. So you're here like this, and now he was on the mount. I just dropped this guy. And now he's inside, like, and I'm pushing this way. I'm trying to drive off this toe line to go. It's the same exact shrimp. My hip, shoulder lines are here. Shoulder line, my hip line is gonna clear that. I'm like this. My hip's already cleared. Now maybe you're trying to push back in. This is a 2-second insertion, right? So try your best to get into that habit. It'll make a big difference for you. I just showed that one little escape pattern, and I could describe it in detail within those 4 inches of like, because you did that, it gives you so many more options later on how you can attack them and stuff. So we got about 5-6 minutes. Try your best to practice it. And it's a drill you could do on your own. So, and you know, I always say this, is I've made this analogy one time about the treadmill and how a treadmill is false to running, because the treadmill brings your leg back. But in the street, your hamstring and your glute have to pull you forward. So if you don't learn how to fire those muscles like that, and it goes into yoga. If you sit with Ethan and you get these guys that come in and they know. Some of them I've talked to them, and they'll go, they do yoga all the time, and I go, man, you got yoga's flexibility, but not BJJ flexibility, and you don't know how to fire your muscles in a certain pattern, and that's what ends up happening. And then you have shortcomings. So we got about 6 minutes. Let's drill it right. Let's do it, guys.